following podcast is sponsored by Robots vs. Dinosaurs. I'm your host, Louis G.
Disclaimer, this podcast is about to spoil several movies from 6 to 20 years old. Lou, read off the list.
Today, Robots vs. Dinosaurs will be spoiling for you, the listener, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, Real Genius, La Bamba, City Limits, Theodore Rex, Return to Oz, The Last Starfighter, Return of the Jedi, and Orson Welles' Touch of Evil.
It's God-funking-zilla!
Hey there, Robo fans and Dino fans. It's your host, Louis G. Today's episode is a bit experimental, so I wanted to include a primer in case you have not watched the movie we're going to discuss today, My Science Project. My friend Jason and I wanted to try a watch-along, which is an episode where we record our commentary as we watch a movie together, and listeners can sync up and watch it with us. Not everyone is going to want to do that, so this episode that you're listening to currently was released separately in case you want to hear our post-watch discussion on its own. A couple of notes on that. One, we started our discussion mid-credits, and we talk all the way through them and beyond. There aren't really any spoilers, and we kind of assume you've already seen the movie before listening to our review, but even so, the stakes are super low for any spoilers we might have dropped. As I said, this was an experiment, so I will plan better next time, but Jason and I had a fun conversation, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Please send all your feedback, suggestions, constructive criticism, etc. directly to our email address, which is in the show notes, and that's robosvdinos@gmail.com. Again, that is in the show notes. Please enjoy Robots vs. Dinosaurs' first #watch-along episode, My Science Project, with Jason Carubia.
Full circle. Very nice.
A freeze frame of Dennis Hopper doing whippets.
Now we're gonna see some of the worst screen grabs from the entire film.
Yeah.
They could have gotten some better shots, but no, they've picked these, and they're pretty awful.
Yeah, this is wild.
Yeah, they're pretty awful.
I've never seen this. I've never seen this in a movie.
You can see some better shots, but no, they chose these. I don't know why they chose this shot, for example. them at the
Just in case there is anybody who decided to listen to this whole thing without watching the movie along with us, I want to explain what we're looking at that we're commenting on. Okay, because now it just got even crazier.
Okay, now we're going to see some extra Vince footage.
The movie ends. The credits are playing. They're playing over still frames from the movie, and also what seemed to be outtakes from the movie.
Yeah, Vince just stole some hot dogs from a lunch line, basically.
Yep.
and they're playing the song "My Science Project," obviously written for this movie, with some amazing '80s themes to
it. Hey, girl, what's for lunch, huh?
Wow. So every once in a while, one of these still frames turns into a moving shot as part of the B-roll that didn't make it into the final film. And this is a crazy thing to have your end credits, and I've never seen a movie do this.
And it's not exactly. There's the middle finger again, right there from Vince's car.
Makeup, Zoltan, hairstylist, Ramsey. Amazing.
Very creative lyrics.
All right, so Jason, I think this is a good time while the end credits are playing. This is a good time for us to really dig into the questions I like to ask my guests on every podcast. Because we did a live watch, because we watched the whole film, we're not gonna spend as much time on them as we usually do. But I just want to ask the following couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question that I usually ask is either what is a robot or what is a dinosaur? And I like to ask both questions regardless of how much each is featured in the movie. In this movie, obviously, a dinosaur is very heavily featured. So I would say this is much more of a dinosaur movie. So let's start with, what is a robot, Jason? Let's just do a brief definition of what is a robot. Do any robots appear in this movie?
So my understanding, as I come to agree with the term, a robot is a machine that takes the place of a person or human in some form or fashion. So if we're talking about just a simple machine that screws a bolt or rivets something onto a car, that's technically a robot. It doesn't have to be alive. It just has to be autonomous and replace the mechanical workings of a person doing the job.
Okay, so two things I want to unpack there. One, it's important that in order to qualify as a robot, automation has to be involved in some way. I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
Number two, this is one that there's a lot of distinction, though. You're saying it replaces the job or the function of something that a human can do. And I think this is a really interesting nuance to dig into with robots because
okay, this is about to play again. We have to turn off this.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen. Don't worry about that. Okay. So, is it that in some cases robots are literally replacing what a human does so that humans don't have to do it? But what I think is always interesting is when we see a robot that can do something a human could never do. In a lot of movies, sci-fi movies, robots are depicted with some sort of humanoid form. But I always find the more fascinating ones are ones that are designed with the imagination of not being restricted to like a bipedal symmetrical form, something that can maybe squeeze into small places that we could never fit into or move locomotively in a way that we can't move,
Yeah, so there's the ethical implications of that. If we're creating machines to replace our function, and to what degree do we want that replacement? Do you want them to ultimately be better than what we are and be superhuman? I think yes, but the ethical implication is: are we creating a situation where those machines could hurt us in the end if they have their own sentience and if their own conscious themselves? Because otherwise, we're just creating slaves, and machines are tools to do tasks is one thing, but as many movies have taught us, robots for some reason are personified. And they take on lives of their own, and they have character and they have personality.
I would say this movie does not have a robot, but it does have technology that gets wildly out of control, which feeds directly into the trope. What this movie does have, though, is a very prominent dinosaur.
It's got a big dino.
Jason, what is a dinosaur? What I'm really asking with this question, especially in the context of this movie coming out in 1985, and then after this movie, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but in my opinion, there's like almost an 8-year gap between this and there being like dinosaurs on film ever again with Jurassic Park, which really both reignited and reinvented the cultural image of what a dinosaur is. So when you think of a dinosaur, do you think of this movie?
Partially. Dinosaurs have always been, the big baddie in films, including this film. Historically, you see films like Journey to the Center of the Earth or King Kong, where the dinosaur is the foe that has to be fought. They're not always done with the best special effects. But this production company, as we said, also made Baby Secret of the Lost Legend in 1985, which was geared more towards kids, but it also features basic animatronic dinosaurs and full body costume people as dinosaurs. So they're trying their best to make dinosaurs believable. That movie failed miserably, and I really hope someone picks up the torch and it does that movie as a podcast. But this movie, which came out shortly after, that's it. For the mainstream big budget movies, there's no more dinosaur films. And
did this movie do well financially? Did this movie do well?
No, it didn't. It failed.
Okay.
It failed horribly. And for good reason. I mean, the plot was convoluted. It didn't have really very interesting characters that people could identify with. And then the special effects were kind of phoned in.
The special effects are maybe the best thing about the movie. I agree with everything else. The plot is really thin. Character development is almost non-existent. But yeah, the special effects, I think, are what makes it watchable. But you're saying it really didn't do well in the box office, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to be only one character in the film, and that's Ellie. Like that's the only character
Yeah.
I want to be. I'm totally Team Ellie right now. But I don't really want to be Vince. I don't want to be Michael. I really don't. Really, I don't think Michael's cool. I don't think any of the other characters are interesting. I don't really identify with them, you know? So
I want to be Ellie, except for the fact that she gets put on ice.
Yeah,
for
that she gets sidelined to
most
the end
of the
movie.
action scenes. She gets fridged.
Right. And
Also,
she's so
I don't want to
smart
be her.
and brilliant. She could be very integral in the whole entire fight against the past. And I really don't understand that. Like we need more support for Ellie.
They completely swap her out with Sherman, and it's to the movie's detriment.
It absolutely is, because Sherman is almost a psychopath. You know, he gets pleasure out of shooting guns and killing things, and he's
the one that blasts
maniacally.
the hole. Is he the one that blasts the hole in the T-Rex's stomach?
I believe so. No, that's Michael. Michael does that.
That's Michael.
But he's the one that shoots the scoreboard at the end. You know, he's the one that laughs maniacally throughout the entire thing. He's the one that's stalking Ellie, and it's
not
okay.
okay.
I'm not a fan of Sherman in any way, but in terms of dinosaurs, this is like kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm assuming for Hollywood, like this dinosaurs failed at this movie. You know,
so
to make them the big baddie, and we see it in the kids' movies. So we see it in Land Before Time. People still embracing dinosaurs, you know, which came out a few years later. You know, you see dinosaurs being loved, but not in live action film.
Jason, would you say that if not for Jurassic Park 8 years later, this movie would have made the dinosaur movie genre go extinct?
I would agree with that statement.
All right. Jason, my next question is, if you have to pick one, because this movie is brilliant and has a lot of amazing stuff in it, but if you have to pick your one favorite moment of this movie, what would it be?
Oh, you know, you love that line that Vince has in the about his sunglasses in the police department, but I like Vince's line in response to the dinosaur where he says, "It's God funking Zilla." I mean, you can't describe the horror of a poor dinosaur more than that line. It's God funking Zilla. Yeah.
That's a good line. And it's especially funny because he also later says something about flippin' Pluto. And it's funny how Vince is an unfiltered character, except in the times where he chooses to filter himself.
Yeah, right? It's like it's kind of like the writer loved the character, but hated it, and loved it so much that they put him in the entire end credits with some extended scenes for some odd reason.
I think that is probably attributed to the fact that Fisher Stevens just gave them a lot of really good takes that
Maybe
they wanted to use, but just couldn't find a place to use them.
This
and that's just the kind of actor
major picture. Yes, he really, really want this to work, so he went for it.
Jason, my next question is, we don't have to talk about my favorite moment of the movie because we've talked about it extensively. It definitely was that line that I was anticipating. Huge payoff. Unfortunately, though, that moment is now sullied forever because now I know, looking at this movie with adult eyes, it's immediately followed by some of the 1980s tragic dialogue in this.
Tragic dialogue where he calls her, some very homophobic comments.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Pretty awful.
But my next question is, and you've dropped a lot of really cool trivia and knowledge about this movie on me already, but what I like to formally ask every guest, what is something you think I don't know about this movie? So do you have any more, anything in your back pocket, any really cool trivia that you haven't dropped yet?
One thing we haven't talked about this film.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
It's completely slipped my mind. So this film, it was marketed internationally different than here in the United States. In fact, they marketed this film similarly to the film Ghostbusters internationally. They reworked the entire poster to match the poster for Ghostbusters. And if you look at the posters online, you'll see they're eerily similar. And at the same time, they've renamed the film Time Busters as opposed to My Science Project. So
Oh, that's crazy.
there's a really cool Ghostbusters tie to this. And they're like, wow, we got to capture some of this success. And you know what? It kind of makes more sense. If they name this film Time Busters, that makes way more sense than My Science Project.
It kind of does. How many months in between? Like, this was the same year as Ghostbusters? Oh no, Ghostbusters was like 1 year prior.
Ghostbusters
right?
was 84. This came out in 85.
So a flagrant ripoff then.
Right. The success of My Science Project that led to them, when they released this, like, we got to market this like Ghostbusters, otherwise it's not going to do well internationally. But yeah, it's one of those films that, internationally is known to something a little different. And you wouldn't think of this film like as being like a stand-up comedy like Ghostbusters, but that's what they sold it as.
That's nuts. I did not know that.
This film, for some reason, has a theme not only about machinery and treating it with respect. It has it kind of has a hatred towards police and authority. And you see it with Bob. Bob hates the pigs, as he says.
Yeah.
And you see it with the police officers and them investigating them for terrorism without any type of evidence other than peace sign. The film really does not paint police in a good light. It's not one of those films that's like the police are on our good side. And
they don't end up solving the crime of who blew up the power grid, do they?
They don't. It's kind of like they're just there, and the detective Nolte, basically just a cookie cutter character from Touch of Evil, and just to serve the director's will of, I wanted to make a movie where this was kind of cool.
They're straw men,
right? And it just serves the plot. I like how this movie exploits things that we take for granted now. Like, we don't see smoking or cigars in movie. If it is, it's not with dynamite,
and it's not indoors. Definitely not indoors.
We don't see people drinking and driving casually. We don't see kids drinking beer at school in the parking lot.
And throwing the cans, littering.
It's one of those movies that you forget, like, oh, wow, this is a much different time. And it was made by Disney. Disney, one of their first live action films to be funded outside of like The Parent Trap and stuff like that. So there's not really much that we haven't talked about, but I think that the movie, the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it fundamentally for what it is, and the foundations that we've looked at through other movies, and what we can pull from it that have changed dramatically.
How far away from Escape to Witch Mountain was this movie? Because that's another like crazy Disney live action movie, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And this feels like a contemporary, if not like around. Maybe it was that was probably a little older.
Escape to Witch Mountain, it was a little bit older. It shouldn't be too far.
But you know what I'm talking about? Like, it's that like nutso bonkers Disney live action thing where like almost anything goes.
That's 1975. So this is more 10 years
when you're going back and watching them, it's way more mature than you were expecting it to be.
This is 10 years off of that.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you want to compare it to other Disney, but if you want to compare it to other Disney movies funded, like the Computer Door Tennis Shoes, which was Kurt Russell, but then later on Pure Genius, which again is another type of nerd movie. It's very, very similar in that faction. We didn't talk about War Games so much because there's a lot of the 80s films, that are similar. I believe The Dad was also in War Games. But yeah, this is a very similar type of style where kids are getting involved in things that they shouldn't, especially things involving the military. And this is a common theme in the 80s.
The Cold War.
During the Cold War, and we see it with where we have communist invasion of the country. So we're seeing a lot of movies where kids are basically putting their noses in where they're not supposed to. And then this similar theme of someone getting involved with a UFO getting held in the hangar. It's kind of like Flight of the Navigator, which comes out much later on in the 80s. Tying it all together with technology and aliens, Flight of the Navigator, if you want to watch a follow-up, I would assume that that's a sequel to this movie. It does involve time travel and warping of space-time. And the spaceship might as well have been this spaceship that a similar spaceship that crashed here.
And that's, I like that you brought up the Cold War. During the Cold War, technology was the big thing that we were fighting over. It was the political football that we were advancing up and down the field was between America and Russia. It's who could advance our technology more, who could conquer more of nature by either developing the means of space travel more efficiently and more ubiquitously, or just making telecommunications faster, making our weapons bigger and more capable of traveling farther, doing more destruction. And it was a literal arms race and technology race in the 80s that really fueled the Cold War. And a lot of our science fiction, a lot of our pop culture from back then speaks on that. This movie, like we talked about, it's more of a spectacle than anything else. This movie is a movie in the sense that film as a medium was originally invented to be a spectacle and show you things your eyes have never seen before. This movie tried to do that, and it was less concerned, I think, with the plot and the character development, but it was fun. It had a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to understand, this is also a launching point. So without this movie, we would have never had movies like Independence Day, where an alien crashes onto Earth, and we show a bunker or a hangar with the alien ship in it or something like that. Those things didn't happen. Hangar 18 was a kind of almost made for TV movie that came out in 1980, which was very similar to this movie, where alien crashes and all the subsequent problems they have, and kind of like Independence Day. And then the movie V, of course, comes out where aliens come to Earth and they invade Earth. But we wouldn't have had comedies, especially mainstream comedies like Men in Black, if it weren't for things like this movie. Very much similar, like a Roswell scenario of an alien crashing and stuff like that, which sparks this entire government, of men in suits to protect Earth, but it's done. Barry Sonnenfeld does it in so much tongue-in-cheek humor. It's brilliant.
So, Jason, the last official question before I have one bonus question that I'm going to ask that's not really related to the movie at all. Well, that's not true. The question is related, but it's anyway. One last official question, and then my last bonus question. The movie got a 13% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It got a 56% audience score, and the IMDb rating was 6.1. So about half of the people that saw this movie liked it, unless they were a critic, in which case the numbers are much lower. I want to know how you would rank this movie. Do you agree with the critics, or do you think it's a fun, enjoyable movie and that we shouldn't really criticize it too deeply? But I really want you to package your answer in the context of this main question. We're not going to judge robots for this movie. We're going to judge dinosaurs. Is this movie a +1 for dinosaurs or a -1 for representation of dinosaurs?
Well, yeah, it's a -1 for representation of dinosaurs. In terms of critical success, yeah, I agree with the critics. You want to compare it to sci-fi movies in 1985? There's no comparison. We were growing significantly. If you want to compare it to teen comedies and teen dramas, filmmakers were learning so much from Porky's. You can't just have gratuitous language of Vince in a film. You have to make it have a little bit of substance and depth, and that's what we see in films like The Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink. That John Hughes did. So it's like there's a lot of things that have changed since this movie. But at the same time, though, you have to give it kind of a little bit of props for continuing the dinosaurs in film. So you can't say it's fully a -1. You can't maybe give it a negative, a neutral 0, just because it's there, and it's kind of like a stepping stone for people to kind of overcome it, and bring change. You kind of have to, you have to have the bad with the good. And this film definitely represents that. It's like, if you want to make a comparison to, Tim Burton's Superman, which everyone in the studios hated, and was used as reference to make Superman Returns. It's like it's one of those things that you have to have the bad in order to force the good.
Yeah, it's a progenitor to a lot of better films and better special effects. This movie was definitely somebody's special effects reel. Like, this was, I should probably have researched this, but it feels more like this was a movie that was made to show off a lot of what is capable in terms of film technology and special effects. They really didn't put as much effort into the storytelling of it as much as they did the spectacle. And I still, honestly, I've said this a couple of times in various ways, but I do think the special effects, as visible as they are, as obvious as it is to see what they're doing and how they're doing it, they're still delightful. They're really enjoyable to watch. They create this really great cinematic language. And I think the dinosaur in this movie, I'm going to say that I let my guests decide at the end whether it's a +1 or -1 ultimately, but I share my opinion. And Jason, I am full disclosure, trying to win you over to my side on this. The dinosaur in this movie, the way that it moves and the way that they depict it with its animations, I feel like they do just enough so that when you're seeing it against the backdrop of a high school gymnasium, I believe that a dinosaur just entered a high school gymnasium. I believe what the film is showing me. I'm not taken out of it by noticing the seams in the matting or the gumminess of the CG because of the fact that it's a big, kind of awkward animatronic robotic dinosaur. I'm really there with it. So how, like, do you feel like the design of the dinosaur gives it more points than like the movie's treatment of it?
I'm trying to think of how you phrase that question again.
So yeah, let me ask it again because it was a very long-winded question. So let me ask a more concise version of it. Jason, is this movie a +1 or -1 for dinosaurs? I believe that the dinosaur in this movie is really well made and really well featured. But I want to know if you feel like this movie is a +1 or -1 for representation of dinosaurs.
Representing dinosaurs, it doesn't promote dinosaurs in any particular favorable light, and it doesn't encourage more movies about dinosaurs. It just kind of makes them obstacles to be fought. I think this movie is a dino movie. It has a dinosaur that's featured. I think some of the secret of the dinosaur in film, and Steven Spielberg does this brilliant in Jurassic Park, is that he learned you don't show the dinosaur unless you have to. Yes. It's kind of like the Jaws theory. He didn't have the budget for a very believable shark, so he decided not to show it. And I don't think this film took that view, or at least the editor didn't. I think maybe if they showed less of the dino, and the bad optical printer effects and matte and blue screen effects, and they showed less of Vince being picked up by the T-Rex, it could have been a good dino scene, especially when they got to the gymnasium. It did have some really cool tone. As you mentioned, it made you feel like suddenly as the walls faded away and they saw this Jurassic world, it made sense. But once that dino started really going at them, and there was just blank fire shooting at the dino that didn't affect the dino. And it really didn't promote dinos in films, other than, oh man, we got to do a whole lot better than that. I love dinosaur films. I think they're great. Anytime a dino's in a film, I'm very, very happy.
To you, what is a dinosaur? Like, in your imagination, when you close your eyes and you picture a dinosaur, what do you see? What is a dinosaur to you?
I mean, obviously a T-Rex is the quintessential dinosaur. It's so out of this current world. It's so out of time and place. You don't see anything comparable to it in everyday life. I mean, at the same time, you could say a Brontosaurus is not worldly, or a Triceratops, but there's something very unusual and threatening about a T-Rex that makes it just unsettling.
You know what it is? You know what I think it is? It's that when you look at a Brontosaurus, you look at a Triceratops, there's a chance you could be friends with it. When you look at a T-Rex, it triggers this human instinct, this fight or flight response in us that makes it both awesome as this really cool, big, dangerous thing, but also like this movie depicts, it makes it this huge adversary that we as tiny, puny, but smart humans need to use our technology to overcome. Nature has created this gargantuan thing that we couldn't possibly stand against unless we use our brains and we build technology like a grenade launcher, for example, in order to conquer it, in order to overcome it.
Just like Vince to blow something up instead of learning from it. Yeah, I mean, it's the dinosaur has to have, in order for it to be effective as an adversary, two things have to happen. It has to eat someone. Okay. You have to see that it is vicious and it will kill you and it'll eat you. That happens in Jurassic Park in the beginning with a goat.
Yes.
Again, not the car.
That happens at the very beginning with Joffrey the Gatekeeper, actually.
Right, Joffrey the Gatekeeper. I'm sorry.
Because the opening, we reviewed Jaws a few episodes ago. Jaws, I mean, obviously Steven Spielberg is the director of both movies, but Jaws is Jurassic Park in so many ways.
It is.
And that's a big one, is that Jaws opens with that like scene showing you how dangerous the shark is, raising the stakes for the rest of the movie. And Jurassic Park does that as well.
Right off the bat with not the goat. I meant the cow. That's what I meant.
With the raptors. Yeah.
The raptors and like, so you have to know that these dinosaurs are vicious and they'll kill you. But this movie doesn't do that. So the dinosaur is just there. And at the same time,
closest it gets to that is picking up Vince, which is a false threat.
Which is kind of like a King Kong moment where King Kong picks up a girl and looks at Fay Wray and just looks at her and it's like but you don't get that viciousness. At the same time, the dinosaur has to be massive in size. It has to be something that you could never conceivably fight. But Vince and Michael and Sherman very quickly go right after it. They pull out their guns and go right after it. And like, you know what, whatever, let's go get this thing. And they don't take any consideration. They don't see it as a threat at all.
And because they have guns.
Because they have
technology.
I would like to see a little more fight in the dinosaur. I would like to see a little more of the viciousness. Man, it's not a threatening creature. It's more of just there, and it's the big baddie that they blow up.
So final answer, without me prefacing it or trying to like lead you to an answer, final answer, is this movie a +1, a neutral, or a -1 for dinosaurs?
Yeah, I want to say it's a -1 for dinosaurs, but if it weren't for this bad movie, we would have never gotten Jurassic Park. So I have to give it a neutral credit, we needed someone to do something that was never done before. And so we have to say like this was the status quo doing this movie.
All right. Jason, I've already asked one of the two bonus questions that I ask, which is what's your snack? And we were drinking throughout this movie. I
didn't have any time to grab a snack.
Yeah. But in general, when you go to a movie theater, what is your snack? Are you a popcorn guy?
I'm a super popcorn guy. I would go buy the big tubs of popcorn and then refill them. And on bargain movie night, I would refill them maybe 2 or 3 times.
Do you make popcorn at home?
And take the third popcorn bin home? No, I wouldn't make it at home. I would take the movie theater popcorn home because I could never make it as good as a movie theater.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like now that now that movie theaters are closed, they're starting to reopen at this point. But we've been in quarantine for a long time. Do you pop popcorn at home when you watch movies, or is it less of an event to you?
So I've been doing the keto diet because I gained so much weight over the quarantine, so I haven't been able to have any popcorn. But when I was at the beginning of quarantine popping a lot of popcorn. I have an air popper. I was popping a lot of popcorn. And there's just something about the mindless crunching during a movie that is just very satisfying. But I'm that weird person that I bring a bin to the movie theater and I'll take the popcorn and save it and put it in the bin and bring it home to eat it at home. It's like I'm that weird
That's
guy.
dedication.
Yeah.
I love that. I respect that.
Yeah. There's something weird about movie theater popcorn. It's ridiculously addictive.
Yeah, I feel the same way about movie theater soda, and it doesn't make any sense that it's any better coming from a tap that is just dispensing liquid sugar and seltzer water. But for some reason, it tastes better at the movie theater. I think ultimately, and I've mentioned this a few times on my past episodes, it's what it is the overall mental experience of I have gone into this dark room and I've turned my phone off. I've made a decision that I'm not going to have any distractions for the next 90 to 200 minutes. And when I'm at home watching a movie in my living room, I could do that. I could turn off my phone. I could put it in another room so it's not distracting me, but I don't. Even when it's under my control, I don't do all of those things. So I think what it is we like going to a movie theater because we're sort of giving up control. We're putting ourselves in this immersive experience where somebody else is creating the whole experience for us. They're dimming the lights. They're raising the sound system. They're making sure that we don't have any distractions for us. And it's very comforting to me. And I'm finding that I miss it more than almost anything else in the past 6 months.
So when I was younger, I never could sit still in church. I could never really sit and listen to the sermons and get into the ritual and really, embrace what was going on. And I found the only time that I could really feel satisfied was when I was in a movie theater and watching a screen, the whole entire experience, the ritual of going, sitting, eating popcorn, being told the story from beginning, middle to end, being led through an ethical dilemma, a moral choice, identifying with someone else, putting yourself in someone else's perspective or shoes. This was my spirituality. And I totally see that. And this quarantine has been the most difficult thing for me at times. It's like, I just say this all the time. It's like, you know what? I miss popcorn. I miss going to the movies. I miss just getting out and escaping, being something else. You could do something similar at home. As you said, you can sit in front of your TV and stream Netflix for 8 hours and binge it, but it's not quite the same. There's no satisfaction of sitting in one spot for a long extended period of time and not being distracted by all these devices. Do
you know what it is? It's the difference between driving somewhere and sitting shotgun while your best friend is driving you somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's also, it's so difficult to work at home. It's so difficult to do things at home because you have so many other distractors. However, if you go to work into an office, it's easier to, get things done and to really, really be involved in something. I miss that escape of going to the movie theater. And I really, really hope that movies survive and cinema as we know it survives for that one reason.
Well, one of our
as a little kid, you look up at the screen, you look right up into this giant screen, this 2-3 story screen, larger than anything you've ever seen in your entire life. You get this emotional experience of having popcorn that smells amazing, candy that's sweeter than anything you've tasted in your entire life, sound that comes around you in all directions. Like, you don't get that sitting on your couch at all.
Well, one of our previous guests, James Reese, voice actor James Reese, suggested that our listeners check out #SaveYourCinema or SaveYourCinema.com. It's a movie theater progressive action that is trying to get Congress involved in saving our cinemas. So that's something, if you're a listener and you're interested in what we're talking about and you want to preserve that movie-going experience, check that out and see if you're willing to support that. Jason, I have one last bonus question before we wrap up. This is a question that maybe you can tell me, because I've asked every guest so far, and one day a listener is going to know the answer, or one of my guests is going to know the answer. This is not an original thought. This is something that I heard somebody else ask me or say, and I really wish I could remember where it's from. But for now, I'm stealing it. Just flagrantly stealing it. It's a great question.
You're basically what Michael is doing the entire movie. You're stealing things and passing them as your own.
Yes, it's on theme with my science project.
With my science project.
This is my stolen podcast. So, Jason, if you could replace any two actors in this movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Danny DeVito, which actors, and would the movie be improved?
Oh, well, of course. Any actors with Whoopi Goldberg and Danny DeVito. God.
We got to keep Fisher Stevens. That's non-negotiable. We're not replacing him with either of them.
Danny DeVito?
What we can remove is all of Fisher Stevens' questionable 80s.
Yeah, I think Danny DeVito and Whoopi Goldberg would be interchangeable to any character roles in the movie. Like, you can put Danny DeVito as the dad, the T-Rex, the dad and his new wife. That would be phenomenal.
Inspired.
But
that's inspired.
But Whoopi Goldberg is too good to be put. And now we're talking about Whoopi Goldberg in the 80s or Whoopi Goldberg now, because Whoopi Goldberg, my choice. I mean, I love Whoopi Goldberg at any time.
Me too.
Looking at God, I would love to see Whoopi Goldberg as the investigator. That would be kind of cool.
Oh, good answer. The Burt Reynolds guy, the dollar store Burt Reynolds.
She would give so much depth to that character, and then she could identify with the kids at times and be like, "Look, kids, I just want to find out, what the hell happened to this dynamite." But at the same time, though, she's doing her job, and she's not just this off the cuff character, that caricature of something from Touch of Evil. I would love to see Whoopi Goldberg there.
Yes.
She could just put her in any role and she would just increase this film exponentially.
So one of
would be great.
Oh, go ahead.
Danny DeVito would be great, like a young Danny DeVito as Sherman. I mean, that would be kind of hilarious.
Oh, sure. Oh my God. Either one of them as Sherman would do this movie huge favors.
Big fan of Danny DeVito as Sherman.
Yes. One of our previous guests offered, I think it was our Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom episode, what if we replace every character with Whoopi Goldberg?
I think that's a brilliant idea. She's got so much going on at all times.
Yeah.
I love Whoopi Goldberg. I'm really looking forward to her coming back in the new season of Picard. He asked her on air on The View, would she join season 2 of Picard? And she said yes. So I'm really looking forward to the second season of Picard.
Very exciting.
Yeah, coming back as Guinan. That's going to be awesome.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate you spending time talking about this movie with me today and watching the whole movie with me. Our discussion of the film, our very, very intelligent and well thought out discussion of this
film. We've talked about my opinion of this film. I really want to get your take of this film. Like, I want to hear what you feel about this film. We really need to get into your mind here, because you're the one wearing the Dino shirt right now. You're the one that's really getting this. So let's turn the tables a little bit. I want to know what you think about this film. Number one, okay. Tell me about this dinosaur. Does it fulfill your dinosaur needs?
It does. I love this dinosaur. I feel terrible for this dinosaur when it gets its stomach blasted open by a grenade. This this dinosaur looks awesome. I talked a lot before about how when it shows up, it busts through this wall and it tries to eat the basketball hoop backboard. And that's sort of a weak way of establishing itself as a threat, but it visually looks awesome. I wish that it had eaten somebody or, successfully. Here's the thing. They brought in all the Mongol horde and the gladiators attacking these high school students, and then they made them murder them. Why not? Why not have those scary adversarial, gladiator with a sword or whatever show up and try to kill you? And then the movie has the T-Rex come down and chomp them, right?
Well, that's the ending of Jurassic Park, where the velociraptors come out and then the T-Rex saves them from them. But yes.
But Jason, which was a more successful movie, Jurassic Park or this?
So basically you're saying you want all movies to be Jurassic Park. Is that what you're saying?
Who's a more successful director, Jonathan R. Butuo, whose name I'm having trouble pronouncing, or Steven Spielberg?
Well, we have to We have to talk about his next Dino movie then. Like,
Yes.
I think it's important. And do you have any teasers about that next Dino movie he's doing?
Oh, well, we talked about Whoopi Goldberg, and Theodore Rex stars Whoopi Goldberg. So this is going to be one of the, when we cover this movie, when Robots and Dinosaurs covers Theodore Rex, I'm going to be very interested in the bonus question.
Wait. So you're saying, Theodore Rex is about dinosaurs or is about Whoopi Goldberg?
I've never seen it. It's going to be a fresh first-time watch for me, and I could not be more excited. But when we do cover it, what I'm going to be really curious about is, does this movie, well, since it already has Whoopi Goldberg, does the addition of Danny DeVito add anything? Are we recasting Whoopi Goldberg maybe as the dinosaur? I don't know. I'm excited to find all these things out.
Everything builds to Theodore Rex, like everything. Danny DeVito, dinosaurs, Whoopi Goldberg,
Jonathan B. Toole.
Yeah, this has to be covered. This movie, everything is building to this movie.
Yeah, I'm looking at my guest list. I don't think anybody's claimed it yet. Let me look. Let me take a quick look.
Look, and the other question that I want to know is if you could change this movie in any way, would you? It's a yes or no question, but you feel free to expound on it. It's
two things. One, yes, I do have a guest for Theodore Rex. It's Jake Turner.
Nice.
Yep. I forgot that he asked to do that one. You're asking me, would I change anything about this movie?
Right.
The casual racism and sexism. Because, I love Fisher Stevens, but this movie and one other, well, it's Short Circuit, isn't it? It's where he's doing a very, very unfortunate accent that's indefensible.
Oh.
So it's just a trope of the 80s and 90s and today, sadly, that there's this casual racism and offensiveness that just, it's very honest. It's an interesting time capsule of the movie at the time and the way that people talked and were very casual about very open about those sort of things. But unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of like censorship in general, but if I were to remake this movie today, I would definitely not, just as a default rule, I wouldn't include any sexism, racism, homophobia. So that's one big thing I would change. But like content wise, I would the one thing we talked about that's a huge thing is Ellie getting fridged. I mean, it's unforgivable.
I completely agree about the off-color representation that Vince represents. Everything that Vince stands for, I think, is sad and unfortunate because Fisher Stevens is so amazing. I would totally take that back. But yeah, the sidelining of Ellie is just a tragedy.
Indefensible.
No, she is the champion of the film.
Yep.
She really is. Everything about her story arc is nothing but great. But they turned her into a damsel in distress, and that's just uncalled for. Especially because she's the one that basically instigates the plot. She's the one that is the catalyst, the entire turning point. The complications in the story basically is nothing but Ellie. The lead characters can't do anything unless it involves her. Putting her on the side and making her knocked out for majority of the last part of the film is just so disappointing.
It really is. Jason, thank you very, very much again for being on the show. And thank you for turning the microphone around, turning the tables on me.
Happy to.
And interviewing me a little bit. That was really fun. One last thing I want to know from you. I always want to give my guests an opportunity to drop some plugs. So is there anything you want to promote, Jason?
I want to promote Ellie. And totally Team Ellie. No. I want to talk about. I have an upcoming documentary. I'm having production right now about police misconduct and the reform of the East Haven, Connecticut Police Department. We're still doing some crowdsourcing and funding that has not gone to production yet. Just do a search on GoFundMe for East Haven Police Department Reform documentary. You can find me at Higher and Higher Films on Facebook. Right now we're doing a lot of run and gun film making of a lot of the social change that's happening right now, particularly involving police, the Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of the reform that's happening. Tons and tons of legislation changes. And just give a look out for that. Other than that, I mean, take a look. Who knows what's going to be on the internet down the road? we'll all share some wonderful new stuff down the road a little bit.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you very much. And something I just thought of before we dove into this movie, I asked you, going into this, are you already a Robo fan or a Dino fan? You said that you're kind of neutral. You're not one or the other. Did this movie sway you one way or another? Would you say after watching this movie, are you more of a Robo fan or a Dino fan?
It really doesn't change my position. I still love dinosaurs. I still love dinosaur movies. I still love robots. I still love robot movies. This movie only makes me love the dinosaur movies that I love more.
Okay.
So
are you a Dino fan?
I'm both. I can't say I'm one or the other. I'm both. Like I can't. If you put if you put dinosaurs and robots in a battle, and ultimately that is the question. You know, who would win in a fight? Technology, versus nature.
Pacific Rim dares to ask this question.
Yeah, I can't say one would win over the other. Ultimately, nature is going to beat both. The entire construct of science in the world and the laws of nature is going to win over everything. Robots decline over age. They rust. Capacitors, they explode. They circuit boards eventually, microprocessors, short circuit and fry, batteries die, there's no, renewable energy source that we know of that's going to sustain the test of time. However, nature's always going to be there. In the heat death of the universe, I think nature's going to win. Dinosaurs, however, though, in spite of them being dead for millions and millions of years, they're still here as part of our lives and culture. So that's got to say something.
Good point, because dinosaur fossils eventually turned into oil. Oil is one of the main things used in plastic. So plastic dinosaur toys are made from real dinosaurs.
I think I would love to see robot dinosaurs take over the world one day. I don't know if that's going to happen. I would
watch that movie.
I would totally watch that movie. I would love to see robots take more of a center stage in the large arc of the earth in terms of of known history, but I don't see that happening. But I like both independently for what they represent. Robots make our lives easier, but dinosaurs make our lives more interesting, and that's my stance.
That is a great soundbite, and I think that's what we're going to end it on. I like that a lot. Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Unless you have any last final thoughts you want to give.
It's God fucking Zilla.
I think that's going to be the opening of I think I'm going to have that open the podcast.
Please.
Soundbite. Yeah. Do you like that? Do you want that?
Sure. Whatever.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
It's a classic.